Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Maroc, and on this episode, I'm excited to introduce you to a woman of many talents, Carrie Jeroslow. I met Carrie last November and immediately knew she was someone special. She has an energy about her that is a combination of enthusiasm, wisdom, and peace. It's hard to explain, but I think you'll get the idea when you hear her stories about everything from discovering her spiritual gifts, to writing her first book, to relationship coaching. And did I mention she co-owns and manages a winery? Truly a Renaissance woman. Let's dive in with Carrie. Hi, Carrie. Welcome to the Peep Podcast. I am so excited to have you on with us today to talk about all the interesting facets of your life. You have intuitive and energy healer and author and relationship coach listed on your bio, and that is a lot of wonderful nouns to be a bit of a grammar nerd since we're both writers.
Yeah.
So I have a million questions for you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited, especially how we met. We met in just the greatest way.
We did. And to fill people in, Carrie is part owner and manager of a winery in Elkin, North Carolina. And they have cabins. And if you want to tell a little bit about the winery, because I can give you a testimonial. The cabins are awesome. The wine is awesome. The pizza is awesome. And I will definitely be returning.
Yay. Yay. Yeah. You reached out to inquire about the cabins. And so it's Elkin Creek Vineyard. It's in the Yadkin Valley, North Carolina, in the foothills, wine country, North Carolina. And we have a tasting room where we do pizzas on Sundays, but we also have our cabins that people come and stay in. And they're just these lovely little 400 square foot, everything you need for a weekend or a week cabin, modern on the inside, rustic on the outside. We don't ask for you to rough it too much. But it was so great because you emailed and you had your podcast or your website underneath it. And sometimes I'll click on that. And then I saw you had this podcast. And of course that piqued my interest because I love talking about this kind of stuff. So then we talked when you came, and it was just such a cosmic, awesome meeting.
It was. I was so excited to talk to you on the phone before I came and then meet you in person. And my boyfriend was like, oh my gosh, you two are two peas in a pod.
Yeah.
So even back then I was like, I'm going to have her on my podcast at some point.
I love that.
One of the first questions I always ask my guests is some version of how did you get started? So my question for you is, what is your first memory of having an intuitive experience?
Well, I wasn't really one that grew up when I was young, seeing spirits that I was aware of. I did grow up being very empathetic. I could feel people's emotions, and I was very affected by how people felt. My friends, if they were joking around and being a little insensitive, that would definitely upset me. And so, but I didn't have any awareness that was anything other than I was a sensitive person because my parents didn't ever talk about this kind of stuff. So then in 1992, I moved to New York City after school, and I was a casting director. And it was at that time that and it was after a breakup that I had. I was really hurt, and I just started searching. I just started searching for something to make sense of everything. I went to the Himalayan Institute on 14th Street and took yoga classes, like learned actual yoga philosophy. It was before yoga studios were on every corner. I started reading books, and my book that I call my spiritual awakening book was Marianne Williamson, A Woman's Worth, was just an awareness that I'm more than just a body. And I was hooked. I just went fully into that. And so knew that the interest was there, but still didn't know how to define what was going on with me. And then I had a friend in New York, and we started getting into astrology. And then a friend of hers said, oh, I have a really good friend who is a clairvoyant psychic. That's what he does. And I know he'd love to talk to you. So he and I talked, and we hit it off so much that he was in Phoenix and then moved to California, and we kept in contact, and we started communicating over the phone. I hit it off. It was just something like old soul. I knew him, and we ended up getting engaged and got married. Wow. And so I was really in what I call the master class of intuitive psychic abilities for the 7 years that we were together. The difference between he and I, and what my growth of that time is that he was a clairvoyant. So he saw things in his mind's eye. So all you would have to do in his readings, you would just say your name 3 times, and then he would just start reading you. And he was crazy accurate. And you didn't have to tell him anything. Well, I wasn't like that. When I found out that that clairsentience, or that feeling, was a a psychic ability, that was when I really started going into, oh, that's how it comes to me. So I can feel what someone else is going through, and that's how I do my readings. So that led to me getting my Reiki certification in 2000, and then massage therapy in 2007. Although I really just did massage therapy to validate, I guess, what I really wanted to do, which was energy work. And funny enough, that's what people came to me for, was energy work. And so then my first husband, Matthew, and I got divorced. That was tricky, but ultimately a really good experience. That's when I went to an energy healer. And within 3 months, I was healed of the biggest core issue that I've been dealing with since 12 years old, which is my relationship to my father and to men that, spilt over into men. So he did many different modalities, but one called theta healing. And when I had that much of a shift, permanent, I just knew I had to learn that. And so that's what I started doing, was really going into that modality. And then I've kind of, over the last 12 years, really made it my own and do more of an intuitive reading where I look at past lives and different energetics, and then do clearings and healings from that.
That is an amazing story. Wow. So what exactly is theta healing? Because I have a feeling a lot of my listeners are not going to be aware of that term.
Yeah. Theta healing is a modality that was developed by a woman named Biana Steibel. When I met her, she was in Idaho. She's now in Montana. She teaches this all over the world. So she was a medical intuitive for many years. She came down with cancer, and she healed herself of cancer. She showed us the x-rays when I went to take classes with her in Idaho. She healed herself of cancer using this modality. And then she just went on to start to just develop it. And I studied it in 2004, and she had been working on it for 6-7 years prior to that. So it is a modality where the practitioner goes into a theta brainwave. Now, this is typically a brainwave where monks spend hours meditating to get into, but she has developed this process and this meditation to get someone up into that theta brainwave pretty instantly. And now that I've practiced it so much, I can get there super fast in a moment. And she's actually had, the brainwaves. I've I've been tested, so I know when I've gone into that. So it's not just like, well, I think I'm in theta. No, I've actually been tested, and she has a whole science wing to theta healing that shows all of these things. Anyway, so the practitioner goes into a theta brainwave and connects to the universal energy of all that is. That could be God, source, spirit, whatever you call it. It's the energy that runs through all things. And so with that, there is a co-creation of the healing that happens. So I am not the one doing the healing. I am observing the healing. Now, the cool thing about theta healing is that it happens on 4 levels. It happens on the core level, which is your current life. It happens on the genetic level, because, you know, we have like issues that we bring in from our parents, works on that level. It works on the history level, which is cultural, religious, and past lives fall in this level. Also, nationality, wherever you grew up, whatever beliefs you have that are tied to that area of the world. And then your soul level, which is all that is. And it can actually pull beliefs out of your cellular memory. So when we go through an experience, we retain a memory in the energetics of our cells. And this modality can actually pull the belief from the cells and download it with new beliefs. So, for example, my book is called Why Do They Always Break Up With Me? That's because that's what I always experience. So when I was looking at that, I didn't know what it was like to not be broken up with. And I needed to learn that on a cellular level. And so this modality with the practitioner observing the universal energy going in and making those changes in the cells. So that's pretty much what it is. And it's phenomenal and instant a lot of the times. Now, sometimes there are these like layers of an onion, right? So we're trying to get to the core issue, because if you're not making money or you're broke, and it's usually not about money. So if you just work on that money part, then, you know, you're not really getting to the core of it. So we really work to get to the core, unpeel the onion, get to the core, but sometimes it is instantaneous. So it's just I've experienced such amazing shifts. And then with my clients, I mean, one 75-minute session, and they're experiencing new things that they've never experienced in their entire life.
Like what, for example?
Like me. So the interesting thing about energy healing is that the results are sometimes subtle, yet profound. So let's say that I clear something that's very core in a lot of us is I'm not enough. Okay. And for the first time, it is downloaded into my cells what it feels like to be enough. How that might come out in the world is in how I communicate with my partner or how I communicate with my kids. A communication with the belief I am not enough is very different than communication with I am enough as a fundamental belief. And so it's subtle. And so a lot of times when I have the healing done, or my clients, they say, I usually respond like this, but I didn't. And I don't know why, but I just didn't. It didn't come out that way. So it is kind of an intangible at times, but pretty profound.
So almost just a shift in your perspective.
Yes. And it affects your outside world. So I'll tell you, for example, like I'll use my personal experience. After I was doing this modality with the guy that I worked with for 3 months, my dad and I had a rough relationship from 12 years old. My parents got divorced, and it was blamed on my father for a long time. And at being a 12-year-old girl, that was a really big experience for me and shaped how I saw men and women relationships. And from 12 to 34, I wanted him to say certain things to me. I wanted him to recognize me. I was so angry at him and blamed him for a lot of how my life was playing out. in the 3 months that I did the theta healing process, I released so much. I took the blame off of him and said, how has this served me? Mm-hmm. And I found ways that it served me. And I energetically grounded those into myself. So I found that I was independent. I left home at 18, followed my ambitions, followed my passions, found my way to New York City, had an incredible career in the arts. And that was because of that time with my dad. And so I became thankful for it, continued to work on it within myself. And in 3 months, my father flew out to Las Vegas. That's where I was living at the time. And we sat in the car and talked for like 4 hours. And he said things to me that I had wanted him to say to me since I was 12 years old. I didn't ask him to. It was just because things had shifted within me to open the space and allow him to speak to me and allow us to have a conversation. It was so incredible. And my relationships with men totally changed after that.
That is amazing.
Yeah, through the energetics and I can't tell you how many times I went to traditional psychotherapy and non-traditional therapy, but that didn't get into the energetics of it. And it felt like I was saying to myself, I should be over it, but I just don't feel that way. And it wasn't until that energetic work that I was like, oh my God, I feel free. I feel so free. And then I saw it show up in my world.
So if anybody follows you on like Facebook, they would see you posting little bits of wisdom. And I love reading your posts and watching your videos because they're so inspiring and uplifting and really wise words. One of the things that I see you go back to time and time again is gratitude, it's something that I practice. I have a nightly journal that I just write a sentence or two, what I was grateful for that day, like what happened that I was truly grateful for. And I have noticed that I've been doing it for 5 years and a lot of positive changes have come into my life in the last 5 years. And so I truly believe that gratitude is important, but can you expand a little bit on how that is part of energy work?
Yeah. Gratitude. So I talk about in my book 2 levels of gratitude. The first level helps you to just get into the practice of gratitude. Gratitude will shift a mood. Not always, but most of the time. I want to add the step of acceptance before that, because I think a lot of times we tell ourselves, I should be thankful for it. That's when gratitude doesn't work. And where you want to bring in a level of acceptance. I feel crummy right now, and that's okay. That is really okay. I love myself anyway, even though I'm angry. I am putting it out to the universe. Help me to find some gratitude. Okay. So, but gratitude shifts things almost automatically. And it's just because of that saying, where focus goes, energy flows. So the more we put our attention into what we are grateful for, the more we are going to bring things into our lives that we have to feel grateful for. The more we focus on what is not working, we are going to bring more of what is not working into our lives. And that's the power of gratitude. I've been talking to my kids about this. You know, they've been going to sleep. I feel anxious, Mom. I feel anxious at nighttime. And I said, okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is go through and think about and feel it in your heart. 5 things you're really thankful for. And I can give you 20 of them right now, but I want you to come up. And it more times than not shifts them and starts deepening their breath and just calming them down a little bit, because they're focusing on what feels good. That's gratitude. Gratitude feels good. Mm-hmm. And And then I'll just add the second layer of that gratitude is I call it the master level gratitude, which is when you can look at an experience that was very tough and find gratitude for that. The way I do it and the way I teach it is to find the lesson. How has this served me in my life? I would never be where I was before if my parents hadn't been divorced and I hadn't gone through, 24 years of really challenging times. I would not have written that book if I hadn't gone through that. So finding the gratitude and then allowing that gratitude to kind of pull you to the other side.
That makes a lot of sense. So what was it that made you decide to write that book? Was it like what? I know you had a transformational experience, but a lot of people have transformational experiences and never write a book about it.
Well, it's so funny because that book, it was right after my divorce that I said, and I kind of jotted a couple things down on my computer. Of course, I'm like 7 computers changed from that because that was, when I was 34. But I had such a good experience, and I just believed that divorce could be positive. And so the book was originally going to be called Divorcing Differently. And I never got to it. I just never got to it, but it has always been in my mind. So in 2019, I think, I sent a prayer to the universe, which is usually how I do it when I'm kind of at a crossroads or I need some guidance. And I just said, well, how can I help raise the vibration on the planet? How can I help people that fits with me? That is kind of fits with me. I'm somewhat of an introvert, and so what can I do? And then I just heard the universe say, sit down and write. Well, interesting. That is a fiction novel, which will come out eventually because it's a 3-part series. It'll come out. But I finished the first draft of that. And then the pandemic hit. And I just felt this really strong calling, like now it's time. I've got to do this. So I signed up for an author program. And interestingly enough, the author program was for nonfiction books. I thought I was going to go in and work on this fiction novel. It's for nonfiction books. And so I just, again, went to my intent, my call out to the universe. What am I going to do? And then it just came down with that book that you wanted to write after your divorce. And so that was how that book, and it was so funny because I signed up for that author program on the day that everything shut down.
Wow.
Kids were home. The internet was jammed. I tried to apply to this program. I couldn't even get my application through, but I just kept doing it. It went through. And then the next day I was accepted in it and started writing that book. And it was such a healing experience. It became a little bit more broad than just divorce. It was just more about breakups and just more relationship patterns.
Mm-hmm. And what would you want anybody who reads the book, what do you really want them to come away with? What's like the one primary point of the book?
The primary point would definitely be that it is all about the relationship with yourself. That's somewhat hard sometimes for people to accept because we just want it to be so-called easy. I'm putting that in air quotes, because we think that someone else will make us happy, or if I just find the right person, I will be happier. If I just find the right job. And really, it's backwards. When I fall in love with myself, when I become aware of what is going on within me that is creating these experiences, and I learn to love myself anyway, that is where the shifts come. So, I am starting a new course and writing my second book about conscious relationships, but I still am not going to work with couples until I work with individuals, because it is the importance of knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. I can't stress it enough. It's scary and it takes a lot of courage. However, it is the most empowering experience that you can go through, because now I know that my happiness is not dependent on what my husband does or what my kids do. My happiness is about healing something within me or releasing something within me and evolving to a more full version of myself. And so anytime my husband says something that upsets me, I actually go off in my corner. I say I go off on my corner, but that's my yoga mat. And I ask, like, why did that trigger me? What am I looking at? And the awareness is usually so huge that it shifts my communication with him. It's so empowering because I know it's not about him, it's about me. And we both come to the relationship with that. So, really, the secret to finding and maintaining conscious relationships is the relationship with self.
That is,
yeah, I let it out of the bag.
Yeah. But it's so deep, and it's something that so many people either never figure out, or they figure out so much later in life that then they have to deal with coming to terms with, like we would look at it as lessons, but some people would have regret. I could have fixed that relationship if I had figured this out 20 years ago, that kind of thing. But then it goes back to, it's everything you've gone through brings you to where you are now and who you are now.
Yes.
And it's something to be grateful for.
It's so true. Everything is perfect on our path because we're not just physical bodies. At least I believe that. Makes me happy to believe that. Mm-hmm. We are these beautiful souls that have lived many lifetimes and have had many experiences. I see past lives, and when I read them, people are like, oh my God, that makes so much sense to everything I'm dealing with in this. And then we just clear all the karma and the, fear and whatever else is tied to that past life. And they're able to go through this life feeling so much more free.
When you work with clients, do you do it virtually? I mean, over the last year, pretty much everybody has had to do it virtually, but you also live in a part of North Carolina that's not a super high population area. So how do you work those modalities through the internet?
Yeah, this is the beautiful thing about energy. There is no time and space with energy. There is time and space with the physical body. So I'm also a massage therapist. I don't do it anymore, but I needed to be in the same space because my body and the other body had to be in the same space for me to put my hands on their, connective tissue and work out the knot. But the cool thing about energy is there is no time and space. So I do sessions and healings with people across the world, Australia. I've done a session with a woman in Uruguay, England, all over the United States, Canada, because all I need to do is close my eyes and connect to the energy, and we're right there together. And we are all connected through energy. And so that's another reason why I love this modality, is because I can work with people all over the world. And they still are sitting, across just like you are from me, and they can feel the downloads go in. They can feel the energetic shifts, which is incredible. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And it's such a wonderful way to look at the world, to know that we are all connected energetically. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful that you're able to spread that word, and as you said, kind of raise the energy of the world with the message that you're putting out.
Yeah, it is. I feel so thankful to be able to do this work and to help people. That is always my intention whenever I go into any session, interview, whatever, is that may I just speak the words that will help one person. And so I turn it over to the universal energy. This is the work. It's so much bigger than me. Yeah, so it's really an honor to work with people.
I could see that. So, part of getting to know yourself and preparing yourself for healthier relationships is self-care and self-love. Can you describe some ways that you practice self-care?
Oh, self-care is another one of my favorite topics. And it's many times these are my favorite topics because I live them and I've experienced so many shifts. So this is how self-care happened with me. So I said, how I started practicing yoga in 1993 in New York City. And I did yoga at the time where there wasn't a yoga studio on every block. And I would, put in my little Gayam Rodney VHS tapes and, there wasn't even YouTube. So, but I would do it very sporadically. And sometimes there would be a year I would never get on my yoga mat, never could get to a class. And so 2017, my kids were 3 and 7, and I was totally lost. I just didn't know who I was. I was giving myself to everyone else. I felt drained. I was overweight. I just felt gross. And emotionally, mentally, physically. And so I decided that I was going to start a yoga practice, but I was going to have a minimum practice. I was going to get on my yoga mat and do 3 sun salutations. So if you don't know yoga and you don't know what a sun salutation is, it's just a series of 6 or 7 poses. And it takes probably about 30 seconds to get through one, maybe a minute if I go slow. And I was going to get on my mat, and that was my minimum practice. I was going to do 3 sun salutations. I started in January of 2017. And with this commitment, I started writing it down. I wrote down what I did every day. I started with a 30-day challenge on YouTube. And the 28th day, I fell and hurt my shoulder. And it was really bad. It was really stretched. I doubled down and I said, I'm going to find a yoga modality that I can do. And I'm going to get back on my mat, even though I'm in so much pain. And I did. I found Kundalini yoga, which is another kind of yoga. It's very different than vinyasa, and started doing that. Then in end of February, I found myself in the hospital just for a couple of days. I figured out a way to do yoga there. There's yoga in bed. There's stretching. There's yoga nidra, which is like sleeping. It's like meditation. And all that to say that I showed up every single day, and I am still showing up. I'm in my 5th year.
Wow.
And here are the ways that I help people get a daily practice, because I believe it's more about consistency and not length. First, you have to get out of the mindset that it's not a practice unless I spend 30 minutes or an hour on my mat or go on a 30-minute run or a hike or whatever. It's about doing it every day. So I tell people, come up with a list of things you love to do that feed your soul, not obligation. I got to work out, but feed your soul. Think outside the box. It could be yoga, it could be Tai Chi, meditation, gratitude, journaling. It could be all of that. That's kind of inside the box. It could be singing a song. It could be going out and looking at the stars for 2 minutes. It could be, I like sweeping. I don't know, sweeping is very symbolic for me because I feel like I'm sweeping the cobwebs of my head, but that's self-care if I can focus on it and focus and see the dirt being swept up. So really thinking outside the box, coming up with a variety of locations, many things that you can do at home. I tell people, think about it. It's 11:45 at night. It's raining outside. It's dark. You have 15 minutes to get in your self-care. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Writing that list down. Then you come up with at least three minimum practices that take 5 minutes or less. And then you document it. I've been documenting it. I'm on day, I think 1,680 something. And I document it every day. So go and moving through the times when you don't want to be doing it. You're like, I really don't want to be. There have been many times I don't want to do it. I don't want to get on my mat, but I do. And what has happened is it has become a place of solace for me. It's become a place that I know I can go to, that's my own little space. I have cried buckets of tears on my mat. I have prayed to the high heavens or whatever you believe in to please give me guidance and help me. I have rejoiced on my mat. I have celebrated on my mat. I've gotten book ideas. That's how I pretty much wrote my book. How I came up with everything was going on my mat and being like, oh, that's the next thing. Okay. And getting on my computer and starting to type. So if you can get into a consistent, and it's also the place that I go to question. So I have an interaction with my husband, I go on my yoga mat. I have an interaction with my business partner or my kids, and I'm really triggered. I have my self-care practice to do to go and question what's really underneath everything. So it's so tiered. It's not only about nurturing yourself and showing yourself that you're worthy of this time, that you're worth it to spend 5 minutes a day, but it's also the place to go inward and to go and continue on this courageous path of self-inquiry.
I love the reality, the physicality, and the symbolism of being able to go to one specific spot in your world, which for you is your mat, to clear your head and get inspired and answer those what is triggering me at this moment questions. I think that's wonderful. That's something a lot of people are missing out on.
Yeah, and that idea of having one place, I've been thinking about that. It is really important, and it's so funny because when I started this, I didn't have one place to myself. It was when I stopped saying I don't have it or I can't do it, and I just asked the question, how can I asked for a solution, that I got this big aha moment. Oh, there's this room in my house that's used for storage boxes and everything. I am going to make that my space. And I spent probably, 2 days clearing things out, and I was just focused. And now this is my little space, my little office that I write in, that I get on. I have my yoga mat. It's always out there. And so I think, that's another thing, is not doing the I can't, because I can't will always lead you to more I can, instead of asking how can I? And allowing that universal energy, God, to give you the answers.
That is awesome. Those are my basic questions, but would you be interested in sharing some stories of maybe dealing with spirits?
Of course.
Sweet.
I love it. I told you this story when you were here. When we took over this vineyard, the previous owner's wife tried to scare us away with saying that there were spirits in this house that I live in. And the funny thing is that does not scare me. What scares me more are mice and snakes. that would have scared me away. But spirits, that was actually really fun. So I don't typically get scared of spirits. To me, it's energy, and there's always a story to it, regardless of how they tend to show up. So I mainly feel and hear them more than see them. And so I'll tell you a story of the first time we walked into this house. So so it's myself, my husband. When we came over, I just had one son, he was 3. And then our business partners, a couple, and their daughter was 2.5. And we all lived in Las Vegas. We all drove across country in a caravan of moving trucks and other cars and animals and kids. And it was just this whole caravan, right? So we get here and we're all standing outside the house. We've not gone in, right? We all joined together. We walk in the house. We're here. We just take a breath and okay, we're here. And all of a sudden we hear this bang. We're what was that? So we go to the bathroom, and there was a mason jar that was around a light, and it had fallen right at that moment. I took that as a welcome. We're not going to break it into a million pieces so that you have to clean it up, but we just want you to know that we're here. And it was actually really cool, I thought. Yeah. And there have been other spirits that have blown lights, or my son, when he was little, saw spirits more. He would see them. We have a little area where we have all of our cabin supplies. He would see a spirit that he would call the cabin spirit, who was always, he would say, was friendly. He saw a little girl who was very scary, showed herself very in this very scary way to him over in our kitchen. And I do theta healing with those spirits. So I was talking to that one spirit who greeted us. This was maybe a couple months into us living here. And I just asked, what's going on? And he just said, I don't feel worthy of God's love. And so I just downloaded, do you want to know what it's like to be worthy of God's love? And I heard the spirit say yes. And I watched it go into his energy. And he instantly, I felt him leave and he went away. Yeah. And so that's how I work with entities in that way. And then in my readings, a lot of times I have, family members who have passed who have messages to give and awarenesses, because many times when spirits pass over, there's a broader awareness. They're not in their body, their perception has widened, and they're looking at things and their life in more of a review and oh, that was why that happened. And so there's a lot of healing that takes place through those entities. And then they feel released too, because a lot of times they're just sticking around because they're wanting either forgiveness or they feel guilty or, any of that energy. And so I do many times downloads for both of them, for both the person I'm working with in the physical body and then the spirit, to allow a overall healing experience for everyone. Because the spirits, sometimes if they're not going to go off, whatever, rejoin the light, there's issues that haven't been cleared. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes they just really want to be around as protectors, as guides and protectors. So every spirit is different, just like every person is different. The unifying factor of everyone is we just all want to experience our truth, which is love. That's really what we want. We want to feel loved. We want to love. We want, and the reason is because that is our truth. We are love. And that is how I describe that universal source energy.
Right. And that's just as a Catholic and spiritualist with a little bit of Buddhism thrown in. I am 100% of the belief that God is love. Mm-hmm. And if that's the way you define God, then we're all connected by God because we are all connected by love, and we should be. Yes. And that is the thing that we should be focusing on.
Yes. And that is actually where we are moving. If you really want to get into we don't have enough time, but there's a new paradigm of being that is coming forth. And we have heard there's such a buzzword on mindset. A friend of mine said this to me a couple of days ago, and it sent shockwaves through my body, that we are moving more towards a heart set, being led to the heart, the 4D, the 5D, that we hear about so much, of a new paradigm of being. We are moving away from being in boxes and being led by the mind and the body. We are being asked to move into a more heart-centered way of being, which is really more our truth. And so that's why there's so many systems that are being broken down. And it's quite chaotic, because there's a resistance to where we are moving. People talk about the age of Aquarius. There is truth to that, of new thought, new heart, new ways of being that are filled more and have the basis of love than divisiveness and hatred.
Yes. And I absolutely believe that. And I hope that the world moves in that direction a little bit faster.
I do too. I think the more people wake up, the more we are going there.
Yeah. And the best way to move it in that direction is to live it for yourself and live as an example of that.
100%. Yes. Oh, yes. You couldn't have said it better.
So if people wanted to get in touch with you, like first off, find your book, and your future book, and or get in touch with you to maybe get a healing session or anything like that, how would they do that?
Yeah, the best way to do it is to go on my website, carriejeroslow.com. You can get to all my social media links. I'd love to have you in my community on Instagram. That's the kind of the easiest way to sift through my posts. I think Facebook makes it a little confusing, but Instagram, it's laid out pretty cleanly on there. But you can get to it all from carriejeroslow.com. You can look at my offerings. You can email me. You also, it's possible to book a session and pay for it online. Although if you email me, I have more availability than what I have online. And I just would love and be honored to help people. One of my biggest joys is helping people through awakening, because in kind of that awakening of I am more than just a body. It's a really beautiful moment that wants to be met with compassion and care. And that is something that I feel like I give to my clients. And it's a real genuine care for their truth and for their well-being. So that's why I love that moment. And so I would be honored to work with anyone who feels called to.
Okay, so if you are interested in getting in touch with Carrie, I am going to have the link to her website in the show notes. So if you're listening to this on whatever podcast app, just take a look at the show notes on the episode and tap on that link, and it'll take you straight to her website. Awesome. Carrie, thank you so much for your time. I know it's a busy season, especially with the winery right now.
So much fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this has been great. And when you put out your next book, maybe you'll come back on.
Yeah, I'd love to. Actually, I have a book coming out before that, but I'm just co-authoring it. So I wrote one chapter, and it is about a new paradigm of education. And I specifically, my chapter talks about NQ education. That's ENQ, energetic or spiritual intelligence. And that is the completion of the IQ, EQ, and NQ. So how to cultivate that, and helping our children really kind of know what they already know, really. So
that is very cool. And when that is out, I will share the link whenever you post it. I'll share it to my Facebook group and my page.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nikki. It's been great.
Thanks again to Carrie for taking the time to talk with me today, and thank you for listening. If you have an idea for a show topic, you can fill out the contact form at peeppodcast.com. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. If I can find a study about it, I'll be happy to use it. Also, if you're interested in sharing your own personal stories of paranormal experiences, I'd love to have you on the show. It can be as anonymous as you'd like. You can keep up with the show on its Facebook page, facebook.com/peeppodcast. We also have a growing group linked from that page in case you're interested in joining the conversation over there. If you like the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app, share it with friends, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Doing so will also help the podcast be found by others. If you're interested in supporting the show financially, I've set up a Patreon page at patreon.com/NicoleMaroc. Patrons will receive special thanks and some para-nerd perks. You can also look for the Peep Podcast shop at tpublic.com for t-shirts, stickers, magnets, and other merchandise. Those links are also in the show notes. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, Patreon, or sporting a t-shirt, I truly appreciate you being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.